Hello, this is Eric Atwell. I'm giving a presentation for the UNIMA International Conference on Science and Technology in Sulawesi, Indonesia. And I'm going to share my screen with you so you can see my presentation slides, and then I'll go through it. You don't actually want to see my Zoom, you want to see my presentation slides. So let's see if I can get this done. Okay, so I'm going to talk today about how to create and teach a fully online master's course in artificial intelligence, since that's what I do. And I'm hoping that at least some of you will be interested in teaching an online master's course in this area too, in science and technology such as AI. And if you are, then contact me after the show. So I'm a professor of artificial intelligence for language at Leeds University. I'm also a Turing Fellow associated with the Alan Turing Institute for Artificial Intelligence and Data Science in London, and a Light Fellow. So at Leeds, we have a Leeds Institute for Teaching Excellence, and I work 2 days a week on a project on artificial intelligence for decolonizing reading lists. I'm also Director of Postgraduate Research Studies, looking after about 230 PhD students in the School of Computing. And also the online MSc AI program leader. I'll tell you a bit more about that in a minute. Obviously do some teaching as well, because I'm a professor at university in data mining at undergraduate and postgraduate level, and also the XJCO. It's in our China campus at Chengdu, and OCOM, that means the online talk course modules. And this is the Leeds International Summer School that we're running in the summer. And I'm very pleased to be talking at your conference. I apologize, I can't actually join you in Manado in Indonesia. It's partly because my wife and son are disabled and it's quite difficult to get away. So I'm actually spending most of my teaching and research supervision administration I do online. So I'm actually, in some sense, advantaged by the COVID crisis and the working online, because now everyone else has to do it as well. Here's a summary of what's coming up. First of all, a sort of introduction to the online master's course in artificial intelligence, to give you an idea of how it's structured. The module basically has 6 units. Each unit has learning resources, an online forum, a webinar online. Each module has to have a module leader to develop it and a module tutor to deliver it every 6 months or every 12 months or every 2 months, depending on which module it is. I want to give you an outline of some recommendations for teaching science and technology online. And in brief, it's basically make sure you've got a well-organized textbook behind it, but don't just rely on the textbook, add on your own research. And in the teaching, don't just simply go through the chapters of a textbook one at a time, but have a variety of teaching methods, including lectures, background reading, practical activities, a discussion forum, and a weekly webinar where you the lecturer, discuss with the student. And this only really works if you've got experienced subject experts to engage the students online. I would say you have to also vary the assessments, multiple choice questions, coding examples, practical experiments, report writing, and so on. And make sure you take into account customer feedback. So I've got lots of examples of student feedback. So there's a bit of background on me. I've been teaching artificial intelligence and data science since 1984, a long time ago now it seems, at Leeds University. And then also at the Leeds University Chengdu campus in China. And I've also helped out in AI and data science courses at Manchester University in Britain, at the Alan Turing Institute for AI in London, in Britain, and also at several overseas universities, Dublin City University in Ireland, Sudan University of Science and Technology in Sudan, King Saud University in Saudi Arabia, and so on. So quite recently in 2021, we launched a fully online master's course in artificial intelligence. And our first cohort is nearly finished. They've done all the taught courses and they're on their final AI project, which is a self-study module. So as program leader, I've overseen the design of all of the fully online teaching and learning resources for each of the modules. So I didn't actually develop everything myself, but I sort of oversaw it. But I did actually develop and teach 2 of the modules, one of the technical modules on data mining and text analytics, and then also the final AI project module, where we have teaching resources on how to organize and manage and implement a research project. I also collected lots of feedback from the AI students. So I've got some good ideas from the students as well on how to do this sort of thing. So here's an outline of the structure of the program. So whereas traditional on-campus modules run over a year, and they have, typically we have 2 semesters, and in the first semester, there's a bunch of modules in parallel, and then the second semester, there's a bunch of modules in parallel, and then over the summer, they do a project. For the online masters, we wanted to target people who are already in jobs and wanted to study part-time, and it has to be very modular. So the idea is there are 3 foundation modules, and the students can do these in any order. Each module runs over 2 months, and each one is taught, well, one at a time. So you might start off doing programming for data science over 2 months, starting in March or September. And then you might go on to do the algorithms module, then you might go on to do the data science module, and the data science module starts in May or November, and then there's the algorithms module, which starts in July or January. And you can do these, you have to do all 3 to proceed onto the development modules. You can do these in any order. You can start at any time, in January or March, or January, March, April, May, June, July. Every 2 months there's a new module starting. So each of these has to be taught twice a year, so that students can do them. Once the students have done those 3, then they can go on to the development, more advanced modules. And they have to do, again, they have to do all 6 to do their masters, but they can do them in whatever order they want. And they can start at any time, and then they can have a break if they need for 2 months or 4 months before starting up again. So I actually teach the one starting in January on text mining and data mining and text analytics. And then there's knowledge representation, reasoning, there's ethics of AI, machine learning, deep learning, and robotics. I expect not everyone in the audience is that keen on AI to want to know the details of these things, but if you do want to know, then just Google it and it's all online. Now, having done all these modules, taught modules, they then have to do a 45 credit project. That's equivalent to 3 of the taught modules. And the project involves, again, 2 months of preparation, learning about how to plan and organize and run a research project, and then 4 months of actually doing the project. And then finally, they have to submit a project report in the style of an AI conference paper. So I'll be assessing it as if I were submitting to the UK AI National Conference that happens every December. And then each module is in turn sort of broken down into 6 units, 1 for each week. Each unit will have lecture videos, background reading, like a chapter from a textbook or some research papers to read, some sort of practical activity, like trying out some AI tools or software. And there's also an online discussion forum. And every week, at the end of the week, there'll be a webinar where I sort of summarize what you should have learned and hopefully have learned, and students can ask questions to follow on from that. And at the end of the 6 weeks, there'll be a final assessment, such as a larger coding project or writing some sort of report. And then once I've done all that and submitted it, then there's a week break maybe possibly even 2 weeks sometimes, depending on what time of year it is, until our next next module starts. So each module has to have a module leader to create the learning resources. That's so that I record these lectures, just like this talk is recorded potentially. And deciding what background reading and what exercises there are to do. And then once it's been set up, these can just run every 12 months or every 6 months for the basic modules, or for the project module, there has to be available every 2 months. There's another cohort starting another project. And the module tutor has to deliver this. Basically, there's not much to deliver in terms of learning resources because they're already pre-recorded. But they do have to host the discussion forum and host the weekly webinar, and they have to mark the assessments, whatever the assessments are. So they have to be technically proficient enough to mark the coursework and run these discussion forums and webinars. But they don't have to be an expert to the level that they have to create the learning resources. So we do have teaching assistants or teaching fellows who are not professors of AI, but they do know enough about AI to teach this stuff, to deliver this stuff. There are about 40 students for each module, so there can be quite a lot of marking involved, and the teaching fellows have to know enough to mark it. Okay, so let's give you some practical recommendations on good practice in teaching, delivering these online masters. My expertise is obviously in artificial intelligence, data science, but it could be general to any science and technology topic, based on my experience, but also on student feedback. And a lot of the experience and feedback isn't specifically about how to use smart AI or educational technology. I do recommend you use chatbots, because that's one thing we do have. At Leeds, we have chatbots to help the students. And even if you're teaching something other than AI, I would advise you use chatbots to help you out. But there are other ideas as well, which also apply to the on-campus MSc and AI, MSc and undergraduate programs. So the first thing is, it's not really rocket science or technical AI, but I would say for each technical subject, try to find a leading textbook in the field, because the leading textbook has been carefully written by an expert, and it has been, if you like, proofread and gone through peer review of some sort. And it usually has online learning resources like PowerPoint slides for each chapter. So it makes sure that the teaching content is really high quality. And the student feedback has been, for example, I like the course was structured as a series of long lecture style videos followed by textbook readings, and the videos are obviously based on the PowerPoint slides provided by the textbook. So having a concrete textbook is a definite plus. So for example, for my data mining and text analytics course, I used Dan Juraski and James Martin's speech and language processing. Dan Juraski is a professor at Stanford University, well-known university in America, but it's also very widely used. I asked my friends at Sheffield and Wolverhampton and King Saud University, they also use this textbook. So that it's a good sign that it must be good if other people are using it too. Another example for the AI project module, I used Pearson also published another book by Chris Dawson. And again, several other universities said they also use his textbook, so it must be pretty good. It's got lots of ideas on and learning resources for the taught module component of AI projects. Okay, second idea, textbooks are a good idea, but don't just rely on a textbook. To make it more tuned for your own university, make sure you do add in some of the research that happens at your university. So for the Leeds course on data mining and text analytics, I added in some content on, for example, Leeds research on chatbots in higher education. We had a European project on this, and we have some chatbots at Leeds which are designed to help student education, so include them. Another thing Leeds does work very well is research on AI and deep learning for understanding the Quran, the Holy Book of Islam, because we have a lot of, we have a very big department of Arabic and Islamic studies at Leeds University who work with the School of Computing on machine learning and deep learning for understanding the Quran. So that's a nice section of the course for that. And the students, again, like this. They like the idea we're integrating our research into the curriculum. Another thing, so that's in terms of the content, but you also have to vary the content delivery. Okay, so I said use a textbook so we can get the students to read the textbook. I've said use some of your own research so I can get the students to read research papers by Leeds researchers, but also include practical examples. So some of the tools we use for our research, get the students to use. So something called Sketch Engine. Sketch Engine is an online tool for collecting text data and analyzing text data to extract useful patterns like key words and phrases that appear in the texts. Well, get an activity. So I could ask the students to use Sketch Engine to scrape Leeds University website for texts used for teaching, and then find out what are the key concepts and topics in our teaching. And that's very relevant to them, and it's about Leeds University. If you scrape, for example, I use this to scrape the physics department website, and we found interesting physics keywords and concepts that are taught to students. And if you're a physics student, you may well recognize these, but it's nice to be able to use some tools to find these out. There's an online discussion forum as well. So particularly if you're teaching online, you can't just leave the students to it to collect the stuff and to learn the stuff, but you also want to discuss with them and keep tabs on them to make sure that they are learning. And every week have an overview webinar where I go through what was taught this week, and the students can ask their questions, and I can ask some questions of the students just to check that they are still learning. So student feedback is, again, they like the variety of resources, flexibility to learn in different methods, and they really like the practical implementation part of it. Okay, so that's it. Use a textbook, integrate your own research, make sure there's online resources, but make sure that the teaching is done by experienced subject experts. So I said we have to have a module leader who's an expert in the field, and we have to have teaching fellows to deliver the learning every 2 months or every 4 months, or sorry, every 6 months that the course comes up again, is repeated. But you have to make sure that the lecture recordings are done by engaging experts. The students like to say, oh, the professor was clearly passionate and well-informed and engaging. So make sure you get some feedback which says engaging. Otherwise, they're not going to be engaged, and they'll stop being interested and they'll drop out. We don't want the students to drop out. So make sure that they come back with some feedback saying, yes, Professor Atwell was good fun. I liked my sense of humor. So it's a good idea to drop in some jokes now and again in the lectures. Even though the jokes aren't very good, at least they know you're trying to engage them. Okay, so that's teaching, and a big part of in teaching is assessment. So you should have some formative assessment. That is, it doesn't count towards the grade, but it lets the students check that they're learning. So multiple choice questions every now and again, so that the students can test for themselves that they've got the knowledge. If they don't score very highly, well, never mind, they can go back and it'll tell them what they should go back and revise. There's some Python programming tests. Again, you can't expect the lecturer to mark every single program that the student writes, but at least you can set some exercises for them to practice on. And there should be, at the end of it, some large piece of coursework which is going to be marked. I know students have said things like a written project as opposed to coding is a welcome change. So they expect to do a lot of coding in an AI course, but they also like doing some written exercises, such as writing up their experiments, or even write a project proposal. And writing a project proposal doesn't require them to do any actual coding, but they've got to say what they want to do. Naturally, not all the feedback was positive. Okay, it's nice to see this student saying, I like Professor Atwell, he was really nice and engaging. But there are some complaints too. One of the biggest complaints I got is they didn't get enough on whatever it was, X, Y, or Z. So they wanted to find out more about chatbots, or they didn't really get to see enough about the deep learning BERT program, which they sounded interesting, but they'd like to try it out in some more. So if you want to take that sort of feedback into account, that does actually require building some new teaching resources. So I've gone back to the AI management and said, okay, the AI program is going down pretty well so far, but actually what they want is some more detail in natural language processing. So maybe we actually need to have a new module. Then there's a problem of which module do we take out to fit this in? And that's another issue. But maybe keep a tab on what the students are actually wanting and what is in demand. What is the current latest research that hasn't been built into the module when you first taught it? So you've got to, even though you might want to reuse the modules over and over again, in practice for state-of-the-art science and technology, you can't simply create a program and by recording everything and then expect to keep teaching it over and over again. You have to keep it up to date. So there we have it in summary. Even if you're teaching online science and technology, textbooks are pretty good. So a textbook comes with online teaching resources like PowerPoint slides and online exercises. But don't just rely on the textbook. Make sure you've got research specific to your university. Otherwise, people will say, why should I come to this online course at your university? I might as well go to Stanford or somewhere else. Yeah? So make sure it's personalized. And you have an opportunity in Indonesia to make it specific to Indonesia. The King Saud University, for example, has Arabic natural language processing in their courses because they want their students want to hear more about Arabic. Vary the teaching style. Don't just give recordings of lectures and background reading, but have activities and discussions and webinars. Make sure you hire lecturers to teach this stuff who know what they're talking about and can engage the students. You may want to hire lecturers just to record the lectures. You don't necessarily have to hire them for the repeat of the online lectures, but at least some of the initial training material. So we have guest lectures from experts on specific topics, and you can hire them just to give the guest lecture. And then you can play back the recorded lecture every time you teach the module thereafter. These experienced subject experts are necessary to engage the students. Make sure you have a variety of assessment types, not just the traditional exams, but it may have multiple choice questions, coding exercises, experiments, and report writing. And take account of the customer feedback so that, okay, once you set it up, you can't just let it run over and over. You do have to keep up with interest. So in terms of engagement, here's a plug. So apart from teaching, I'm also involved with the Turing Institute, which was a national institute in the UK to promote artificial intelligence and data science. And as well as promoting teaching and research, they also do sort of meeting the general public type things. So they have something called the Cabaret of Dangerous Ideas. And this goes around comedy clubs around the country presenting AI in a comedy setting. So they hire professional comedians and they get professors like me to come along, and then the professional comedians poke fun at us and make fun of our AI research, and it goes down very well. So I've been at Leeds Comedy Club in June earlier this year, and a professional comedian let me talk for a bit and then pointed out how silly and funny it all was. In White Men Can't Teach Properly. Okay, so to finish off, if you want my help and advice in designing and teaching a fully online master's in science and technology, for example, in AI, but it could be in other related subjects, then by all means get in touch. The easiest way to find me is to Google Eric Atwell. I've tinkered around with my Google account to make sure that it does turn up. It's the first most popular hit if you Google Eric Atwell. There's my website. Okay, thank you very much for listening, and hopefully I can answer some questions now. But for now, I'll stop recording. Okay, thank you very much.